the home stretch of First Kings today. Now, um, I'm not going to. We're not going to go through all the chapters. Uh, I'm actually going to skip a few of them, but not consecutively. I am going to read a. We're going to. I'll throw up 17, 19, 21. Basically, if it's Elijah, we're gonna go through it. It's about just like a succession of kings. Might skip it over a little bit. Um, we left off at the end of 15, and so I'm going to scoot up 16 here, and we'll see if I can make this go smoothly for the first time all year. First of all, if I is my thing. Oh, can you allow me to share to screen share?
If I can
You would
figure out.
make me co-host, I think, in order to do that.
Oh, right, right. Make co-host. Okay, it's coming.
First Kings what?
Got it. You see that there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. No, that's not the one I want. This is the one I want. And the answer was no. It wouldn't. It's not the first time it's going to. Yay! There we go.
Hey,
All right. Cool. Put this down in front of me. Yay. So the word of the Lord's doing a lot of stuff. He's saying this to this one and that one, and we got a few bad kings here, especially up in Israel. There's been a couple of rebellions actually. It's not a straight succession of the same house. Zimri was a usurper. Omri is another usurper. But what I wanted to show here is the very last verse in chapter 16. I think it's pretty interesting. And it's kind of an aside. It says, in Ahab's time, Hiel of Bethel rebuilt Jericho. He laid its foundations at the cost of his firstborn son, Abiram, and he set up its gates at the cost of his youngest son, Sigub, in accordance with the word of the Lord spoken by Joshua, son of Nun. So I went back and looked it up, because that's what I'm supposed to do. Everyone remembers the fall of the city of Jericho, the blowing of the trumpets, the falling of the walls. It's a Sunday school greatest hit. And following from that, in Joshua, verse 26, it goes like this. At that time, Joshua pronounced this solemn oath. Cursed before the Lord is the man who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son will he lay its foundations. At the cost of its youngest will he set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. What I find interesting is not just that it's a fulfillment of that curse, so to speak, not really prophecy, but that curse. And Jericho had been occupied; it just hadn't been built up with its foundations, foundations and gates. It never, seemingly, never was unoccupied. But what I like about this is that the writer assumes the reader is familiar with the curse narrative, right? Most times you have a reference back, and there is a reference as the Lord spoken by Joshua, son of Nun, but he doesn't go into the details. He doesn't say, and by the way, like it said, the firstborn son and lastborn son are going to die if you try to do this. He names the first and lastborn sons, right? It says that at the cost of them, it was rebuilt, but he doesn't retell the whole story. He assumes a familiarity with it, which I find kind of cool. All right, that's all I got to say about 16. But 17 is worth going through because 17 we have the introduction, at least in First Kings, of the most important prophet of the Old Testament, maybe. Our boy Elijah. He just pops up too. Now, as the word suggests, now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe, where Tishbites come from, in Gilead. He said to Ahab, who's still the king of northern Israel, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain the next few years except at my word. So the Lord has given Elijah the power to start and end a drought. That makes him, a number one incommunicado in Ahab's book. So Ahab wants him dead. So what's he going to do? He's going to run away. Leave here, the Lord says, turn eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You'll drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. This is cool. So he does what the Lord tells him. He goes to the ravine, and the ravens in verse 6 bring him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Now, that's really cool. Like, he's being sustained by the Lord through the intercession of animals. And he doesn't have to eat vegetables. This is exactly the kind of diet I would want if I was Elijah. Someone brings me a nice roast beef sandwich in the morning and in the evening. Nice, cool, clear water from the brook. That's living, as far as I'm concerned. So he's there for a while. Sometime later, a couple of years, right? The brook dried up. There had been no rain. Now, this story, I think, is a part of the liturgical calendar. I know I hear this reading in the Catholic Church sometime during the school year every year. Can't remember exactly where it falls, but I know this is an Old Testament reading that I hear once a year. It's in there somewhere. The word of the Lord came to him, go to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he goes. When he came to the town gate, the widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and said, would you bring me a little water and a jar so I have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called, and bring me a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar, and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat and die. So this is their last meal. This is the last bit of food they got. And Elijah says to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me, what you have, and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. So she went away and faithfully did what Elijah had told her. There was food every day for Elijah and the woman her family. The jar of flour was never used up. The jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with what the Lord had spoken. Miracle number one. Number two, sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. Maybe not the same son as the son of the widow. Anyway, for the jar of flour, okay, he grew worse and worse, and he finally stopped breathing. She said to Elijah, what have you got against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son? Give me your son, he said. Took him from her arms, carried him into the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on the bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, Lord my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow I'm staying with by causing her son to die? Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times. First time he uses one of the magical numbers, 3, 7, 40. He uses 7 in a second. Stretches out on the boy 3 times and cries out to the Lord, Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him. The Lord heard his cry. The boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down from the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said, look, your son is alive. Then the woman said to Elijah, now I know you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth. Offhand, I can't recall any time previous to this where God uses a prophet to to return life to someone who's already died. Perhaps someone could fill me in on one that they remembered that would have occurred before this one. I don't think so, though. So that's mighty awesome, right? Elijah is proving himself like right from the start. This is the introduction of Elijah. And he's proving himself right from the start to be a major prophet. Right? The Lord is sustaining him, is keeping him alive. The Lord is keeping alive the people he's with, and gives him through he uses him as a vessel through which he can restore life to someone.
So this doesn't relay the story of how he was called to be a prophet. It just starts him out right here.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you go to Chronicles, you got more, right?
Oh,
But as far as First Kings goes, he's only in 4 chapters here, right? But he's important in all. He's doing major stuff in all those chapters.
I think
Please.
Elijah is a prototype of one kind of prophet. He's very different, I think, from Isaiah and Jeremiah and the oracular prophets, if you will. And his ministry, if you want to call it that, is marked by miracles and healing. And so he becomes kind of the model of that kind of prophet. And of course, in the Christian interpretation, Jesus is the fulfillment of that style of prophecy.
Indeed. And of course, when Jesus is on the mountain there with Peter and John, right? And Moses and Elijah appear, right?
Right.
And I mean, that's good company. Something about his importance. And it was with Peter and John. I remember that right? It's Peter and John.
Yeah.
Definitely Peter and somebody.
Yeah.
It is John. All right, so moving on in 18, I'm going to skip over the first part here with Elijah and Obadiah. Obadiah is not the minor, quote unquote, minor prophet of the book of Obadiah. Obadiah is a name that means servant of the Lord, so there are lots of Obadiahs. It was like, it's a pretty common name. He's a religious man, but he works for Ahab, who is one of the kings who's serving the Baals. Because of his wife. Well, he's probably a nasty human being anyway on his own, but his wife Jezebel is not helping matters much. Elijah and Obadiah have kind of a back and forth here that is interesting, but for time purposes, I'm going to go right to verse 16 and get Elijah where he needs to go, which is with the king. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab, and he told him that Elijah's around. And Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you troubler of Israel?" Yeah. "I have not made trouble for Israel," Elijah says, "but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals." "Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." Jezebel seems to be an important villainous figure because she was religious. I mean, there were other like foreign gods, right, and other people who were serving these foreign gods, but Jezebel seemed to be very enthusiastic about her religious practice, and she's financially supporting the prophets of Baal. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people, and he said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." It seems like pretty good, straightforward advice. The people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, "I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left." That's not exactly true because Obadiah had been hiding some of them from Jezebel. But anyway, Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God. Right? It's a simple test. And the people said, "Hey, it's a good idea." So Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one of the bulls and prepare it first. Since there are so many of you, you go first. Call on the name of the gods, not like the fire." And they got it going. And they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "Baal, answer us," they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. Now, I think of this several different sources went into writing this, and several different writers using several different sources. I like to think that in these next couple of chapters, a writer who had some skill, had some like literary skill was at work here, because there's language that goes beyond just the explanatory. And right here, I think is a great example, especially at the end of this passage. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. And I love this line. There was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Could have just said no, there was no response, right? But there's the literary figure. No one answered. No one paid attention.
Mhm.
You know, that's so good. Then Elisha said to all the people, "Come here to me." They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elisha took 12 stones, each one for each of the tribes, and 32 with the stones. He built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it large enough to hold a lot of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. And this is still not good. It's still, not impressive enough just to create the fire at thin air. No. Fill 4 large jugs with water and pour it on the offering on the wood. Let's make this wood really wet. Do it again. And they did it again. Do it a third time. They did it a third time. 3 times until the water is overflowing the trench that they had dug around the altar. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, that you are turning their hearts back again." Didn't have to do any dancing or slashing. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice instantly, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. Okay. Boom. And Elisha commanded them, so just so you know that he's a gracious winner. Then Elisha commanded them, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away. They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered. All right.
Mhm.
Good. And Elisha said to Ahab, who's probably standing there with his mouth wide open, "Go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." Hey, what do you know? So Ahab went down to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees. "Go and look toward the sea," he told his servant. And the servant went and said, "There's nothing there." 7 times. Right? So we have 3 sets of 3, and now a 7. 7 times Elijah said, "Go back." 7th time, the servant reported, "A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea." And Elijah, very slick, very cool, says, "Go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, a heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came on Elijah, and tucking in his cloak into his belt so he doesn't trip, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. So Elijah he's like God bringing down fire. He's got the rain starting again. He's showed Israel, or at least his representatives of quote unquote all Israel, that the Lord is the Lord. And in case you've forgotten, you're his people. All right. So get rid of these shrines, get rid of these Asherah poles, get rid of these temples to Baal. Don't worry, we got rid of the prophets. And boy, Elijah, he's a butt kicker. Very, very good. Right, so this was 18?
Yeah.
And 19. All right, we go through 19. I'm going to skip over 20 when I get to it. But this is particularly great because it's more Elijah. All right. So Elijah runs away again because Jezebel had heard that he had all her prophets slaughtered, the ones that she's supporting. And Jezebel got a message to Elijah here at the beginning. It says, with that formula, the curse formula, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I would not make your life like one of them, the dead prophets. So he takes off, and the angel of the Lord is hiding him up a mountain. I'm gonna skip ahead here to the end of verse 9. This part here, just so cool. All right, so the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? He replied, I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left. Now they're trying to kill me too. And the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. He knew. Then a voice said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? He replied, in the same, like here, the symmetry here, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, putting your prophets to death. I'm the only one left. Now they are trying to kill me too. And the Lord said to him, go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint this guy king over Aram. Also anoint that guy king over Israel. And also get your successor, Elisha, who will succeed you as a prophet. The second guy will put to death any who escaped the first guy. The third guy will put to death any who escapes the second guy. Yet I reserve 7,000 people in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, whose mouths have not kissed him. The Lord in the whisper. I always think this is one of the coolest parts of the Old Testament. When God appears, unless he's appearing as as an angel, it's usually in a very big way. And I love it, not just that he appears in a whisper, but that he doesn't appear in any of the big things that immediately precede him. And this is also, I think, a great example of a much better, someone with literary talent, writing that section there. I think it's just awesome. Mm-hmm. So he finds Elisha. He's going to succeed him. Elijah went down from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. 12, huh? And he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and I will come with you. So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people. And he ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and become his servant. So he's like, he gets an internship in prophecy with Elijah. He doesn't have to just take over. Elijah just doesn't go over the whirlwind right then. Right? Actually, he doesn't go over whirlwind at all in 1 Kings. But he gets to hang with Elijah and see how it's done before he takes over. All right, in chapter 20, it's about Ahab. Matter of fact, the 34 years or so of Ahab's reign basically is the last 7 chapters of 1 Kings, although there's last chapter is a little bit of this one, succeeds this one, succeeds that one. What chapter 20 shows, and I'm not going to read it loud, is that Ahab wins his battles when he calls out to the Lord. But whenever he doesn't need to win a battle, he goes back to being an apostate, like son of a gun. He just can't shake the old Jezebel thing. Although, there's a prophet that rises up and says that Jezebel's body will be eaten by the dogs in the city. a lot of bodies get eaten by dogs in the city and, by birds in the country. That's what's always about to happen. 21. There's only two left. Jezebel was watching a lot of HGTV apparently, and she was watching Bitter Vineyards and saw a vineyard there, and she really liked it. Must have been open concept. That's what everyone wants, open concept vineyard. You ever watch HGTV? And these people, the house hunting shows, and all they ever want is an open concept kitchen, right? And I don't understand that. I mean, I love my family. I don't want to look at them all the time. Give me rooms with walls. Anyway, verse 21. I'm sorry, chapter 21. Sometime later, there was an incident involving a vineyard belonging to Naboth the Jezreelite. The vineyard was in Jezreel, close to the palace of Ahab. Ahab said to him, "Let me have your vineyard to use for a vegetable garden, since it is close to my palace. And, I like vegetables. In exchange, I will give you a better vineyard, or, if you prefer, I will pay you whatever it's worth." So he's not just trying to take it. He thinks he's going to strike a deal. But this is family land. So Naboth says, "The Lord forbid that I will give you the inheritance of my ancestor." So Ahab went home and he pouts, sullen and angry, because Naboth the Jezreelite had said, "I will not give you the inheritance." He lay in his bed sulking and refused to eat. This is a very mature leader. I could make illusions. His wife Jezebel came in and asked him, "Why are you so sullen? Why won't you eat?" He answered her, "Because this guy won't give me the vineyard." And his wife says, Jezebel says, "Is this how you act as a king? Get up and eat. Cheer up. I'll go get it for you." So that's how she does. She wrote letters in Ahab's name, placed his seal on them, and sent them to the elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's city with him. In those letters she wrote, "Proclaim a day of feasting and set Naboth in a prominent place among the people. But seek 2 scoundrels opposite him and have them bring charges he has cursed both God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death." So the elders and nobles who lived in the city did as Jezebel directed in the letters she wrote. They proclaimed a fast. I should say a feast, shouldn't it? No, fasting. All right, fast. I said it wrong before. And they seated Naboth in a prominent place among the people. Then 2 scoundrels came, and they sat opposite him and brought charges against him. And they took him outside the city, and they stoned him to death. And they sent word to Jezebel, "He has been stoned to death." As soon as Jezebel heard that, she said to Ahab, "Get up and take possession of the vineyard. He refused to sell you. He is no longer alive. He's dead." When Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, he got up and went down to take possession of Naboth's vineyard. And presumably he was happy, dried his tears, planted his tomatoes. Then the Lord of the gods came to Elijah the Tishbite. "Go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, who rules in Samaria. He is now in Naboth's vineyard. He has gone to take possession of it. Say to him, 'This is what the Lord says. Have you not murdered a man and seized his property?' Then say to him, 'This is what the Lord says. In the place where dogs licked up Naboth's blood, dogs will lick up your blood.'" Yes, yours. So Ahab said to Elijah, "So you have found me, my enemy." "Yeah, I found you. Because you have sold yourself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord, I'm going to bring disaster on you. I will wipe out your descendants and cut off from Ahab every last male in Israel, slave or free. I will make your house like that of Jeroboam." Remember him? And Baasha. You don't remember him? "Because you aroused my anger and have caused Israel to sin." And also concerning Jezebel, dogs were devoured Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. And then I love there's a parenthetical here in 25. "There was never anyone like Ahab, who sold himself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord, urged on by Jezebel his wife. He behaved in the vilest manner by going after idols, like the Amorites the Lord had driven before him, for Israel." When Ahab heard these words, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and fasted. He lay in sackcloth and went around meekly. But he didn't lay down and pout, apparently. That's only when he can't get a vineyard. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. "Have you noticed how Ahab has humbled himself before me? Because he has humbled himself, I will not bring this disaster in his day. I will bring it on his house in the days of his son. All right. The last chapter, hold on a second here, so I can see y'all. Hey, there's all you wonderful people again. Hello again. The last chapter deals with a succession. Ahab dies in a battle against Aram, and actually with Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, as a ally. They're actually fighting together. They came with this strategy. It more or less works, but Ahab gets kind of a unlucky hit in the middle of his armor, a crease between his plates of armor, and he ends up dying in a chariot. And there's a verse in 22 where the chariot is taken to be cleaned and washed down from Ahab's blood, and dogs then lick up the combined blood water that's running out of the chariot, thus fulfilling that curse prophecy that dogs would lick his blood. Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, is one of the good kings, mentioned as someone who walks in the ways of the Lord and keeps his commandments. So, and that's cool because Jehoshaphat's a great name. And I'm sure that we've all considered naming a son Jehoshaphat. I know. My only negative consideration is that instead of calling him Joe, people would call him Fatty, which we want to try to avoid. Especially because he's my kid, he probably would be too. So we end at the end of 22. 1 Kings ends with Jehoshaphat passing, with Ahab passing, with their kids taking over, with Ahab's kid being bad, Jehoshaphat's kid being all right. And that's basically where 1 Kings ends. And it doesn't end on a cliffhanger. It doesn't end in any particular way that would lead you to believe that this is a good place to end 1 Kings and begin 2 Kings. It seems to have ended there because it kind of splits the book of Kings in two exactly right there. Okay, and it's as simple as that. You know? When we come back September, when we go through 2 Kings, Elisha will be a main character. I remember in 4th grade, 5th grade, somewhere along those lines, during my Missouri Synod grade school education in Milwaukee, we had to write not a paper, but put a chart together, like a poster that was like Elisha, not verses, but Elisha on one side and Elisha on the other, and who did what and when, so that we could, when the test came in 5th grade, keep them separate and remember who did what. Although it seems kind of like, strangely not pointless, but a little bit overdone now, it really did help me remember a whole lot of stuff. Those religion classes back in grade school. In the late 70s and 80s, when rote memorization was still considered a skill worth knowing, they really did a lot to pound that into our heads. It was in 4th grade that we had to memorize the books of the Bible in order, and then one at a time go up to the teacher's desk and repeat them, and say them in order, Old Testament and New Testament. And to this day, when I begin a year with my religion class at school, I prove to them that I can still do it. Because my Catholic school kids, I say, open it up to this book, and they'll say, is that Old Testament or New Testament? What I would love is we don't have that one. It's like, we don't have that one. I'm like, no, you got a Catholic Bible. You have 4 that I don't have. But I know you have it. I don't have, I know it's inside, blabbering, that's okay. My wife and I, when we were still dating, we went to a wedding of a friend of hers at a Catholic church. It was my 2nd or 3rd Catholic wedding I've been to. And the Old Testament reading was from Tishbit or Tibbet or something along those lines. And it's true, I leaned over to her in the pew and I whispered in her ear, that's not a book of the Bible. She's like, yeah, it is. It's like, no, it's not. it was that day that I learned that the Catholic, has 4 other books that I didn't know about. And I pulled out the Bible from the back of the pew ahead of me, and I started like going through right in the middle of the story. It's like Wisdom, Judith. What are these things? I've never heard of any of them. I have to go back and read them sometimes, see if there's anything in there worth knowing.
Well, you have really inspired me to read some of this stuff. I always imagined most of the Old Testament dry, just lists of people, and I know there is that stuff, but there's so much more. The other thing I really appreciate is that, like just today, even a couple stories that we do have in the lectionary, like the oil and flour, it's in context, so it's much more meaningful than just reading the excerpt. So I'm inspired. Thank you.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah, hopefully, like we'll continue having fun when we get back together. I know when Elisha takes over, there's some there continues to be some really wacky stuff. I love the wacky stuff.
You?
When Elisha gets God to make Bear kill a few kids who called him Baldy, it's one of my favorite parts of the whole Bible. With that, like I said before, at the beginning of the year, in their first religion class, I always read that section to my students to keep them in line.
I think it's very interesting that the bad guy in most of these stories is Ahab. And history tells us, on the other hand, that he was probably one of the best, if not the best, kings of the northern kingdom. He and his father, among other things, established peace with their neighbors, probably through intermarriage with Jezebel, and also embarked on a very extensive building project or construction project, building roads and major towns. And so it turns out that historically speaking, Ahab is one of the good guys, but certainly that's not the way that the First Kings or the Bible as a whole views him. My suspicion is that the story of Naboth and the vineyard probably was a short story that had circulated as an independent literary item and somehow got incorporated into the story in First Kings. And it may account for there's a certain amount, like you said, of literary finesse to many of these passages. And I suspect that that's because they were adopted from short stories that had been circulated probably for hundreds of years by the time they were incorporated into the book.
Mm-hmm. What you said about Ahab and about his father Omri is absolutely correct. If you look at outside sources, you would think that those two were the most important kings in the history of the Northern Kingdom.
Right. And they're really the only ones that show up in a lot of documents from other culture.
Exactly right.
Most of the kings of either Judah or of the Northern Kingdom, the only evidence we have of them is in the Bible. There is no outside corroboration, but with Ahab and Omri, we do.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, Omri is credited in other sources as being the king that finally subdued the Moabites, and who had been a pain in the butt forever. And it doesn't even get mentioned. It doesn't even get mentioned because like we talked about at the very beginning weeks ago, the purposes of judging these kings is all about how they're keeping up the covenant relationship with the Lord. Their political acumen or lack thereof is part of the annals of their history. Is it not all written in the annals of their history? All right, so not the subject, not the point of these. But it is interesting that if you had never read anything else, you would think that these were minor kings, and in fact they were quite major. And that literary touch, near the end here, I think what always strikes me is the expression, nothing is, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like nothing happened, no one was listening, it could have just been nothing happened, but he says it in 3 different ways.
Right.
And there's prose there that it's got skill to it. You know, it's not just a recorder, it's a writer.
Mhm.
Um, and that's not the same for all of Kings. As we've read through it, there were obviously passages earlier in Kings that are rougher. We talked extensively about the somewhat nonsensical section that where with the old prophet who like tricked the man of God from Judah for what reason we don't know. You know, there are rougher recordings, but someone with more finesse, as you said, I think was responsible for these last few chapters here. Indeed. So that's all I've got.
That's great.
And hopefully, Monty and I will all discuss things in a few weeks. And I'm game for picking this up again in September, but
Great.
details would be
That's great.
forthcoming.
Thank
I
you
think
so
that would be excellent.
Thank you guys for hanging in and for coming back at 11:30 or whatever it was today. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great.
Take care, guys. Stay out of the sun. Go Brewers.
Take care. Have a good
All
summer.
right.
You too.
All right, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Marianne.
Hi, could you hear me?
A little bit.
Not well, huh? I guess I'm too far away from the screen.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I had tried earlier about 10 after 11 and I couldn't get on then and it said to try later and I thought, well, I'll try 11
Yeah.
and I got it then.
Yeah, we had some, well, it all worked out, but sorry it took so long. So glad you could be here.
Yeah, certainly could. And thank you. Anyway, it looks like a nice day.
It does.
Ravens, why ravens? Are they considered a very wise bird?
Well, I've heard that they are very intelligent.
I
So,
heard too.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe that's why.
yeah. Okay, you have a good day.
I will. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.